Do you know how to make your favorite cocktail? Think about it. Think about the mixology that goes into it. Mixology is considered an American art form that mixes alcohol with different liquids, spices, and flavors to make a highly desirable cocktail. And it wasn't until the 1800s that mixology truly became an art form that was used in taverns and saloons. And nowadays, it is the basis of every bar. And mixology is ever changing with the times. Each era brings a new twist to the cocktail world, from the ancient Romans to the 1800s, where the cocktail's popularity began, to the modern day, which is now a staple in the bar. In the bar, when you order a cocktail, certain steps go into making that cocktail. And every cocktail ordered has a history of mixology and how it came to be. Mixology is ever evolving with times and brings alcohol drinks to the patrons of new flavors and new ways. I have been a bartender for the last 8 years, and I have had the privilege of making hundreds of drinks for people, and being able to use my own mixology, and through that repetition and trial and error, and being able to find what really works. And it does take a while to get a hang of it, you know. So I have a passion about the history and how things came to be with mixology. And in this speech, I'm going to tell you about how mixology got started, some of the events that have affected mixology, and what it's like today in modern times. A lot of people will say that mixology can be dated back to the ancient Romans. They used a lot of drinks that were fermented and ciders. And, according to the article of the Ancient Rome, An Unknown History of Alcohol, their culture was based around alcohol. So they probably had a lot of drinks that they didn't write down that they did mix, and then they always had wine. Wine is a basis of mixology too, because you have to know how to use that alcohol to make it into a wine and stuff. And then after the Roman era, not very much is mentioned until the 1800s. The 1800s, where they have now dated back to the first cocktail in the mid 1800s from New Orleans, which is the Sazerac, which is a simple drink of whiskey, absinthe, sugar, and bitters. And then up comes the great explosion of the cocktail into what we know in the modern world, which in 1862, Jerry P. Thomas, who is considered the father of mixology, wrote the very first bartender's guide. And this had all the mixing ratios and everything in it to get started and be a mixologist. And this is where we started mixing drinks instead of just drinking them straight. And then as time went on, people started doing their thing, and then the Prohibition hit. And this was a big hit to mixology because it slowed down things, because we weren't supposed to be drinking alcohol. So this created a lot of backwoods drinking, or distilleries, and the alcohol was just not good. So they started muddling fruit and mixing fruit into the drinks, which is a form of mixology. And it created the desire for sweeter drinks. And then also it stretched the bartender's imagination, because they didn't always have things to mix with, so they started using spices, and different drinks came out of them having to experiment to get this to be able to be drinkable alcohol. And then after the Prohibition ended and bars and saloons were able to open up again, they started popping up all over the United States, and bartending became a profession at that time, and more mixology was being used, which brings us to modern day mixology, which is in every bar and restaurant, every mixed drink that you have. And every bar offers cocktails. So that's a really cool thing to know, that, it's a long line of history to get there. And then also mixology is very common nowadays, and it's actually a highly rated skill. People take classes to get to mixology, to be able to do mixology. That's how it has changed and become so complicated that you've taken a simple drink and now you can make hundreds of drinks with different kinds of alcohols and stuff. And so just a little recap on what we talked about. We were talking about like ancient Rome, where it dated back to ancient Rome times, mixology did. And then there was a huge break until the 1800s, and Jerry P. Thomas showed his mixology guide and started mixology up again. And then the Depression hit, and that took a change because we started adding fruits and stuff to our cocktails. And then nowadays, mixology is needed to be a bartender. So, I mean, those are a few things that, have created the history of mixology. And, I just wanted to leave you with a few things that are memorable about mixology. A few facts. The Old Fashioned is the most popular cocktail and one of the oldest. And there is a national cocktail day, and that is March 24th. So that's really fun that we have a day that celebrates mixology. And then there's just one last thing. Always, always, always remember to drink responsibly.